to you. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and call your speakers as I organize here the tables for them?
Yes, absolutely. That's fabulous. I am delighted to be here moderating this panel conversation that we're about to have with four veritable titans of the health data ecosystem in these islands. As a little bit of background before we get into the session, the reason we've been able to assemble this panel of leading speakers is that the Health Data Forum here in Cardiff is running in parallel to something else that's also happening to happen in Cardiff over the next 2 days, which is the UK and Ireland 4 Nations Plus Digital Leaders Forum. So that is the 4 jurisdictions in the UK plus partners from Ireland get together on a 6-monthly basis. And it is the most senior leaders in technology and data in the health economies in those locations. And they share their investment plans, they share their challenges, and sometimes they have to share some hugs just to try and keep going. Yeah, and sometimes a beer. So we are going to invite to the stage, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves in just a moment, Paul Rice, Rebecca Cook, Paul Rice from Northern Ireland. Oh, we're going to get a clap for everybody. Rebecca, come on up. Where is Rebecca today?
Oh, sorry. I missed my cue.
You missed your cue. Hello, good morning. Is Sonia here?
Yes.
Sonia is here. There she is. Very good. And finally, Tom Laffin. Excellent. You are all very welcome. So I'm going to ask. These 4 panelists to do a brief introduction of their why they're here, their personal bio, rather than me doing it for them. Just to give you my credentials, and it was mentioned a moment ago, I work for Accenture. I am a senior advisor for a company called Accenture, helping them to build a business in Northern Ireland. But more relevant to this conversation here today, until 6 months ago, I was the Chief Digital Information Officer for Health and Social Care for Northern Ireland, sitting on the board of the Department of Health. That was then, and I think still is, although Sonia may give us a bit of an update on some of the restructuring and recruitment work that's going on in England, it was the only senior departmental CIO type appointment in these islands. So that's it was an exciting job. It was the best job I've ever done, and it gives me a little bit of a basis on which to ask some questions today. So the theme that we've got for this session is pretty broad. So you're going to have to strap yourselves in. It was like the supermarket sweep of topics for a moderation. It was the UK and international, data collaboration and AI and ethics. So we've got a lot to try and get through, and I'm not entirely sure I know where this is going to go. So from the outset, you'll have to bear with us and strap in. We've got 45 minutes today, and I will be coming to the audience for questions. So do start to have a think about what you might ask the panel as I grill them to get us going. Without further ado, we'll do some introductions. Do we want to start at this end, Tom?
Thanks, Dan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tom Laffin. I'm the Chief Data Analytics Officer working in the Health Service Executive in Ireland. We provide public health services across the public setting in the Republic of Ireland. I'm joined today by my colleagues from the Department of Health. I'm in position as Chief Data Analytics Officer this year. It's a new role that's been established in the HSE. I hear some of the topics that have been discussed today and the challenges. They're very much the challenges that we're facing as well, but very much, I suppose, also understanding and appreciating the real opportunity and value we have. I look forward to discussing and meeting some of you today, and I suppose, Dan, to get a better understanding of, I suppose, some of the challenges that we can have to work together, I suppose, and learn from our experiences. Thank you.
Good morning, Sonia Patel, Chief Technology Officer. I've had a few different job titles in the national role in England over the last 5 years. But former to that, I'm from the front line. My career grew through working in CIO roles and sort of community acute mental health hospitals running large digital infrastructures and programs. By way of background, you asked common challenges. So I'll just gloat as England just for a minute, just give me this, because I am on my own here, I haven't got other colleagues with me, we've just launched the 10-year plan, and actually digital is a mainstay shift in there. It's not in the basement. It's not in a different document that's likely to come later. It's a mainstay shift. Behind that, we have engineered 10 billion, which feels a bit too good to be true right now, which feels quite sizable. But in the size of England, actually, it's important that we spend our money wisely. So the common challenges we face, much to kind of earphone, is standards and interoperability is still sort of continuous systemic problems, which I hope with new insights, with new ways of technology doing things, with better collaboration between industry and ourselves, that we're overcome some of those. The second, I think, is education and ethics. So the more and more I'm kind of thinking about sort of, midlife, you start thinking about your career, but actually I'm thinking about the delivery on the ground. Digital will start to become additive. And I don't think we can necessarily afford it to be additive. It really does need to be substitution in terms of core functions. Now, that requires quite a lot of human change to do so. That's taking away old habits. And so, we've got a lot of good things going on, but we're just not seeing the kind of pure mainstreaming of digital skills. And I think that aligns with, there's huge ambitions in this sitting government to move to digital. So we really need to prepare the size. Our workforce across the force represents a huge part of the workforce in society, so a duty. And with that, I think it said it's education and ethics, is we're on the frontier of AI, and actually if we don't educate our workforce, our people, our citizens in the right way, actually the biases that could present continuously is something that we need to factor in. So I'm sure those are challenges that others are also kind of facing into at the moment.
Thank you, Sonia.
I'm not sure if we were sharing a mic, but you can have your own now. My name's Rebecca Cook. I'm the Chief Data Officer at Digital Health and Care Wales. I've worked as part of the National Digital and Data Organisation for the last 20 years, and I'm sure you're all thinking, was I 12 when I started? I was, trained me young. My background predominantly was in clinical terminologies and data standards. I still look after those areas within my portfolio. In 2020, I had the opportunity to lead the data response for the COVID-19 pandemic. And following that, I took on the role of Programme Director for the National Data Resource, which Evan has nicely explained to you there. I'll try not to correct anything that he's said. In that. More recently, I was appointed as the Chief Data Officer. This is a new role that was established by Digital Health and Care Wales around about a year ago now, to really reflect the profile and the importance of data, not just nationally, but across the whole system. Thank you.
Paul.
I don't sing, but I did hold on to the mic all by myself. I don't know what that's about. I'm really sorry. So I'm Paul Rice. I guess the easiest way of saying, I have the pleasure of following Dan into the portfolio of the Chief Digital Information Officer in Northern Ireland. I'm a returnee if I'm in Northern Ireland, insofar as I left there to sort of pursue my academic studies as a strapping lad 37 years ago. So I have had a variety of roles and responsibilities across the NHS, regionally, nationally and locally. Sonia and a number of other colleagues in the room we've known each other for a long time. We can go through those scars probably over a pint later. In terms of the first thing I wanted to say in terms of even curation this morning, what a masterstroke to get Michael West talking to us in the first instance, because I don't know what to do with the challenges that he sets us. in the context of compassionate leadership. I suspect people coming into this room might have thought we were all going to have a conversation about ones and noughts and ones, and how do we reorganise those ones and noughts in a way that is, mutually beneficial for the service, for the people that we serve, for the politicians who set the tone and tenor. Masterstroke. This is a series of human interactions enabled by technology and challenged by technology. So I'm interested in how our conversation making this gear shift into things like artificial intelligence, which feel like the most ones and naughty that we could ever get, keeps an eye on absolutely that human element. And I can really see a challenge, and I think Sonia's alluding to it, where we want to release the benefits and opportunities that are promised, but it's all about how we as human beings interact, behave, and change the way in which we do things. So, that's
agreed. I thought Michael's presentation was excellent. You've had two Wests on the stage in one morning, which is very rare. Both of us from Lancaster, so that's excellent. I'm going to start us off on a positive note today. Hopeful. The sunny, sunshiny weather in Cardiff here has put me in a optimistic, future-focused mood. So let's start with that. Let's start with each of you giving us 2 to 3 minutes on what's going well, what amazing progress is being made in your relative jurisdictions on data assets, including maybe some examples of how data insights have tangibly improved care or outcomes. And then if you can, in such a short space of time, give us a little bit on national positions on adoption of AI. So what are we doing to exploit the data to turn it into information and value, as Yvonne was helping us with earlier on? And I'd like to start with Wales as the host nation, please. Rebecca, lead us off.
Of course. So I think in Wales, our real strength actually is the approach that we've taken to having health and care data as a shared national asset. So I know that Ivan talked quite a lot about some of the complexities of our national architecture, but over the last 20 years, we've built national data repositories that surface a single view of a patient record. So we've been at that for a long time. We have a single results repository, a single documents repository that enables us to view care based on the patient and not geography and not organisational boundaries. And I think there's a real commitment to that across all organisations in Wales, actually, and making sure that we've got that patient-centric approach to the record. I think our other strength is the collaboration. So the National Data Programme is a strategic data programme for Wales, but DHCW is an equal partner in that programme with all health and care organisations. So we feel that shared ownership of the platform and what we're trying to achieve. Quite early in the programme, we developed a data strategy for health and care in Wales, which all organisations signed up to. So I think that's something that we're really proud of in terms of we're all signed up to the end goal, regardless of how hard that is going to be, certainly through the data lens. We've invested quite significantly in terms of time and resource to put those foundations in place. And now we're starting to see the fruits of a lot of that labour come into fruition. So there's two real elements to our national data platform. One is the element which Ivan described in quite a lot of detail around that shared record for a patient. The other element of that platform, though, is the data and analytics platform. So that enables us in a sort of cohesive architecture to liberate data directly from the record into our analytical stores to enable us to take advantage of those advanced analytics. And we know that the data volumes are going to grow faster than any other industry in healthcare. So having those solid foundations that make us fit for the future in terms of scalability and compute power and all of that, I think has been fantastic. So in terms of where we are now, I think we've done a lot of the hard work in terms of that strategic vision, our objectives, going together on that journey across Wales with all of the different organisations. I see colleagues over here I work really closely with. Now it's about getting the data into those stores and into that target state. We're working with organisations, particularly and Ira Bevan, who are in the room, to start to look at actually what can we do now that we couldn't do before. So we're using quite a lot of the capabilities, so the forecasting capabilities for demand and capacity planning. I know that's making a huge difference to planning teams out there. We're also able to use a lot of their sort of Gemini large language models in an early phase, really. And I think the thing I'm most excited about in that space is if you want to get some information, you generally need to find an analyst who can write a SQL code against a warehouse and ask them what the answer is to your question. And you've got to really help them to understand the question you're trying to ask of the data as well. And I think using tools like Gemini and large language models, you can start to enable access to insight to clinicians, to planners, to finance colleagues who can have those conversations with the data, because, you know, more insight leads to more value, I think is the key. So we're in our early stages, I think, in terms of really utilising those capabilities at scale, but it's been really powerful to start to be able to demonstrate the value of the foundations that we've put in place.
I don't think anybody would disagree. Simplification and democratisation of the development of insights. I think that's a fabulous thought. Thank you. Why don't we go to Tom next?
Thanks, Dan. I suppose in the health service in Ireland, we're going through a significant reform at the moment. So we're even reforming our structures out into 6 regions with a centre managing and coordinating. As part of that, within technology and transformation, we published a new digital for care strategy. It's a framework setting out the vision of where we need to go. And obviously that's underpinned by a number of principles with the patient-centred, and I know, Helen, you referenced the patient earlier today. It's a real significant focus from us in terms of how we can deliver that. Obviously, the discussion around compassion and our workforce, that's obviously key, and how we bring our workforce, their digital capability and understanding of their well-being, how we connect our digital services, how we enable research and innovation. And we can't deliver that integrated care model unless we have good data in the right place at the right time. So we are really challenged in that space. I suppose one of the lessons we took from COVID, and there are a few we've taken from it as we look back, was there's a real appetite for information. There's a real requirement to bring all that data together. But people want the information, they want to understand. We had people in Ireland, similar to you, queued and listening in to figures and data and stats. They wanted to see it. So they understood and they related to it because they were interested and they saw the relevance, and they could derive insights from themselves as to the direction we were going. So we built on that momentum of trying to pool data and, share data versus data sharing. And Ifan, you mentioned it, that's a real challenge for us because we have numerous legacy systems out there. But we have really good examples as well of systems that are working really well, but not interconnected. So that's a real challenge for us as we look forward. We're in the process of now developing out a data strategy which is going to set the vision for where we're going. We're obviously going to underpin that with a number of core pillars. Data management and data governance. I mean, we need to understand and get to the point of principle where everybody understands data is there for the public good. So it's not just for us internally within the HSE, but us as patients and the public. We want that data to be used better so we can deliver better care. And we may even get to that in the context of how we share data. Your National Data Repository here in Wales is a really shining example of where we need to go in the context. But we need to break down the barriers, both from a technical perspective, the standards, the governance, even the culture where people are now moving into the space where they understand why they're collecting the data, why they need to collect it. We should really be giving them the tools, and as we are, where they only collect that information once, and it's shared across the various different care settings, and collected in the right format and the right standard. So as we move forward, we obviously, even in the context of how we deliver better service, we have to be more productive, more efficient, and without the data and the insights, we're going to struggle. Now, one would say even in the health service in Ireland, we're data rich. I mean, we have loads of data. I mean, it's in pockets. We're now pulling it together centrally as well, so we've started doing that. and I'll explain some of the real examples and benefits that's bringing at the moment. But we're making steps forward. So we're seeding an individual health identifier now into some of our, what we class as legacy system, but they're operational, they're functional, they're up to date. So if we seed in an individual health identifier into those systems, we can now pool that data together and link it across our healthcare system. What's that meaning for us now? That's meaning now that we earlier in the year launched a health app. So it's our first venture into providing back the public and the patient access to their own information. So we're not at the 500,000 mark yet. We're ramping up as we provide more services and more data on there. So a couple of weeks ago, we launched and released all appointments across our acute hospitals on the app. So now, there's, I think, upwards of potentially 1.3 million appointments available across over 800,000 patients. So that brings more people onto the app. We can securely identify them, we have the data for them, we can authenticate and know who that individual is and present their information back to them. And they then obviously can control and have more visibility. They can load up their own health information, like their own medicines, and bring that to a clinician in front of them. So we know all that's really helpful. It's going to drive better understanding of the data and the information we have on the public and patients. We're also developing out, I suppose, an AI strategy, and we may discuss that separately later with Dan, but that's creating a view and a vision for us as to how we can maximize the use of AI. But we're asking ourselves the question, is our data AI ready? And in some cases it is, and in other cases we will struggle in the context of standards and interoperability to make that safe and sound. Thanks.
Fabulous. Thank you, Tom. Why don't we go to Sonia next?
Success. Ministers are still asking me how many faxes and pages we have in the NHS, right? Consecutively each year I'm being asked this. So yeah, look, jokes aside, I mean, clearly we hear more about what's happening in our own NHS through the HSJ than we do, because there's so much change that's happening at the moment and reform. Putting that aside, like building and capitalising on the 10-year plan and digital being a mainstay shift, we're making 3 big plays to enable the analog to digital mission. So the first play is towards a person-centred architecture. So from our perspective, what we're seeing, if we don't believe it, it's happening. It's consumerisation of healthcare. So with the launch of your app, the work that we've done on the NHS app, the number of users we've got, we've put a product strategy behind it, which actually is really in-depth user research. So our inclination as leaders to say that's what they might need. But actually, when you look at user research, it takes you a lot deeper into the things that actually consumers want from their healthcare services digitally as well. So a really good example of that was, we said, yeah, medical records appointments, which actually gave us dividends. But what people wanted was prescription tracker. I don't want to carry my FP10 note to a surgery, not know that they don't have the drugs, then have to wait, then have to go back again. And now we've implemented, much like the logistics that you see of Amazon, a prescription tracking, and actually phenomenal uptake of that. That's just making people's lives easier, not losing the paperwork, knowing which pharmacy they need to go to. They know when it's been dispensed and it's ready to pick up as well. So we're finding some really interesting pathways for our citizens which are unmet, which could lead to, like, medication miscompliant, X, Y, Z. So we're really moving to that person-centered architecture. That actually might mean that we tip over our traditional bringing the data out of respective silos to actually what we are flagshipping and calling the single patient record. So we've got some really interesting dialogue around, does the mastery of the data happen in the single patient record, or does it happen in the native record that sits within providers? Really interesting ground. I don't have the answer. But just to say, behind the NHS app, we're putting the single patient record to give more utility to our citizens. It's also probably going to change the way our workforce would traditionally work as well, which is very organisationally bound. So this could be a time where, actually, do we need everyone to have a separate bookings and referral system, or do we just have one nationally, which then allows you, much like airlines, to slot in and buy? So, I mean, the thinking's there. The ministers have powered some of this thinking. Some of the ideas are absolutely bonkers. There was one about measuring payments because they were leading to lots of falls. but we stop there, and we've got to just make sure we're prioritising based on need as well. So I do think that first play around person-centred architecture is a big one. We're doing lots of architectural capability mapping, which is exciting for someone like me, but actually trying to take the rest of your leaders on their exercises is interesting. The second play is towards moving the NHS towards digital public infrastructure. So we've got new powers through the Data User and Access Bill that puts legislates our information standard notices on suppliers, not just new contracts, but also our incumbent suppliers. So this is like a heavyweight vehicle that we've found. But actually, what we've also determined, just trying to resolve point-to-point interoperability issues is just, you'd be there forever and a day to do so. So we're making a bigger play towards resetting the total conditions of the market through digital public infrastructure. So our analysis of Estonia, India, Rwanda, Brazil, and now even UAE, they're all taking that step. So what that means is we're resetting the market dynamics. We're being more intentional about market shaping, so where the enterprise EPR suppliers provide, or to the way where small to medium enterprise businesses will provide the clearer demand signalling. So I think that's just a better market dynamic rather than lots of vendors coming out with point solutions that don't really go, and then they get exasperated, right? Oh, you're a really bad buyer, you can't scale. So we're being really intentional about setting the market dynamic so we get better value. And alongside that, tightening our standards directory, being really clear about actually which frameworks we'll use as well, so we have clarity of standards and the line of sight in terms of buying. But one of the big things there is we're going to set the conditions for anyone that interoperates, much like the rails and the road infrastructure. They're part of public infrastructure. So they've got a set of standards they need to meet by default. So that is it sounds simple, doesn't it? I mean, in theory, you'd say just set new conditions, but actually we're making quite a seismic shift across our supply base in doing so. And the third shift is, well, if we're going to do all this great stuff, we're also going to look internally around shifting our own operating model. So if anyone's worked in the England NHS, I think we're working much better. Probably Paul, as he was leaving, we are, as system leaders, and we've got a few hundred CIOs across the nation, we're much better at working in the open, working more collaboratively. Our hands have been forced to stop competing with each other because we've only got finite resources that need to go around. But actually, it's still very crowded. So we have about a 5 billion per year spend in the NHS, and our users get a very variable experience, but whether they're in sort of the north or the south, and actually that can't persist. And even after putting quite a significant investment over the last 3 to 5 years in EPRs, in shared care records, we are still not seeing the rate of maturity at the same rate of investment. So we know the estate is crowded. There's multiplicity because from a national point of view, when we've delivered services, they haven't kind of delivered for our users in the best way. So locally, they've bought a workaround or patched something up, or they've vetoed that we're not going to use it at all. That can't exist in the new world. We've got to make sure every public pound is used, spent wisely, and we can see the benefit as well. So real clarity. Are you going to stop me?
Thank you. I am going to stop you because I would really like to give the audience an opportunity to ask some questions.
I'm going to stop there. So I'll stop there. We're just clarifying who does what, which is one of our biggest agendas.
Yeah, thank you. Sonia is going to be around during the break. So if there's anything that you heard there or anything that Sonia didn't say that you'd like to hear about, either raise it in questions now or over a coffee. Paul, could you do us 3 minutes on Northern Ireland?
That is an existential challenge to me at the best of times, as you well know.
I know, which is why I mentioned. But I will come to the audience for questions in just a wee minute. So, Paul, give us 3 minutes on what's going on in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so the 8th of May 2025 has to be recognised as a significant date, where it's our 4th and 5th trusts went live on the Encompass platform. That does create an opportunity yeah, it creates opportunity in so many ways in relationship to the health and care system. Again, just for context, I'm sure people know, but consistent with our Wales colleagues and our Scottish colleagues, I mean, we've got arrangements where I'm talking about a scope of practice in those trusts, which is acute mental health, social care, community service. You're talking about an integrated model in principle on the page that is then being wrapped around or supported by the EPIC platform fundamentally. I think one of our steps forward through that, and we had a meeting with Assembly members on Monday in Stormont, is about the MyCare app and the extent to which that becomes a vehicle for us to engage with the population in a very many ways. I think people are interested in the transactional aspect of that around appointments and bookings, which is, you know, absolutely a necessity at this modern sort of customer service orientated system. But we're interested in patient recruitment for research. We're interested in proactive pushing public health information and advice and guidance and support and so on and so forth, and individuals bringing their own data and insights to bear in that regard. There are also 2 or 3 other assets that have developed over the last period, the Northern Ireland Trusted Research Environment. So our relationship with GP data in relationship to GPIP is a really important element or aspect to where we can go forward. Is the old my sketch about we've got all of the right notes maybe not being played in the right order. It's the sort of challenge that we face at the moment, but I'd much rather start from there than our infrastructure wasn't to that level of maturity.
Fabulous. Thank you, Paul. I'm going to come to the audience now. Does anybody in the audience have a question as we shift from what was a good news story to start thinking a little bit more about challenges and opportunities out there? Does anybody have a question they would like to pose to the panel? Is it a question about the English Federated Data Platform? No. Excellent. Helen Thomas, please ask your question. Pardon me.
I guess, how are you, you can choose who can answer, but how are you dealing with AI? AI is always the answer, regardless what the problem is. So the new shiny thing now has become AI, and when are we going to be using AI? What about ambient? How are we doing that? I've seen something really good and really shiny over here, so when can we put that in place? How do we get the rest of the service to appreciate some of the challenges and risks, but also not sound like we're being the, you know, harbingers of doom because of the risks involved, but actually to make those to really harness the opportunity of it?
That's a great question. Would anybody in particular like to pick up? Tom's going to have a go.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, look, if I can start, I think, Helen, that's probably a sentiment we all feel around our service providers. We have a part of the organisation that are racing ahead and they're going, we have a product, can we use it? And as part of my remit is to try and set up an AI centre of excellence. We're already through the process of putting in place an actual framework underpinned by an AI strategy as part of our programme for government. But the framework is really around how we operationalise that, is to try and create an understanding of what additional governance process we need to put in place to consider AI. There's a lot of constraints and consideration from our perspective in the context of the EU AI Act that's currently there now at the moment. So we know there's legislation from our perspective that we need to adhere to, but it's an element of trying to create awareness of the obligation across the organisation such that it can be implemented safely and responsibly. So there's an element of putting a framework documentation in place from our perspective. We've also taken
in some cases. So some things will hold risk, and I think it's trying to take that measured risk. I think we're all trying to say is how far do we go, and when do we, like, what levers do we have to pull back when we know that something's going wrong? But in that conversation, all of it stems to risk appetite. So if we are going to be a more AI-ready healthcare service, we're going to have to lift our risk appetite. And actually, the healthcare services risk appetite is super, super low, right? So that afternoon, I had something come into my mailbox saying, the job evaluation panel group have said you can't use AI to use job evaluation. And I was thinking, that is a perfect example. There's no sensitive, there's no personal information. It's criteria-based.
These forums. Our colleague at the back used a phrase that I scribbled down, I can't remember it, but about effectively collaborating, what our job is here, or who we are, connectors, collaborators, whatever what you call it. Just keep the depth, the quality of the conversation, and be pinch with pride, probably.
Very good. Tom, you have a microphone in your hand. You go next.
I mean, if I listen to some of the feedback even here, as we're on a journey in terms of an EHR journey that we're just starting out on, where business case approval, shared care record implementation, we've just done the app. I'm hearing lessons, I'm hearing challenges. They all sound very familiar. We'd love to be in a position to be able to obviously learn from those and then contribute in terms of the experience we're actually getting now with engagement with new vendors. We'll be going through a procurement process. So those challenges, we really need to learn from those. And even the linkage of data across our close neighbours as well, Dan, that's going to be really important, because that learning we can actually bring and that sharing of data has to have been real value and opportunity for us. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tom.
Can we just clarify, the seating plan wasn't set deliberately, just in relation to it's a much shorter gap.
Donegal's very close to Ulster. Rebecca.
Yeah, so I would agree. I think it's focusing on where we get the biggest value by collaborating across the 5 nations. I participate in quite a lot of standards forums, particularly, and I have done over many years. And I think it's just knowing actually what you can only do within your own jurisdictions, but actually what you can share across. I think the standards piece is really key, particularly where we're operating with the same system suppliers in a lot of respects, and we're asking systems to configure by different country. I think there's some really good flow of data across borders. I think on your touch on is work with skill and capability. We don't have enough, of skills and the capabilities that we need, particularly as we move towards cloud and new and emerging technologies. And actually, how do we share that knowledge and not duplicate effort, trying to learn the same things by ourselves, but actually pooling and even, looking at embracing some of those sort of multidisciplinary, but multi-nation teams potentially to take forward different initiatives. I mean, we've talked about an NHS app. We've all got one of those, I think, or we've got one on the way. We're talking about shared, single patient records. I think we're all on that journey. So it's just looking for the sweet spots, I think, to work together.
Lovely. Good collaborative note. Sonia, bring us home.
Yeah,
your final remarks for us today.
Well, I was going to take you internationally, but I think if anyone watched the state visit last week, one of the things, the sound bites that really stuck with me is US are buying up UK talent. So we really need to think, we're always looking across the pond or somewhere else, but actually the strength is in the talent that we have in our own teams, how we equip them, how we increase social mobility in our local geographies to actually bring that talent pipeline in. So one of the things we really do need to capitalise is the talent that we have across the 4 nations in building sort of diverse, unified systems and standards.
Fabulous note to finish on. Recognise the brilliance in our colleagues in this room and the brilliance of our panel. I'm sure you will all agree and help me to thank our panellists for their great contributions. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody is looking for better healthcare solutions. What if AI could be the answer? AI in healthcare isn't just a buzzword, it's revolutionizing patient care. With AI, we can achieve more accurate diagnoses and personalized treatments tailored specifically to each patient. AI systems analyze vast amounts of medical data at lightning speed, identifying patterns that might be missed by human eyes. This means early detection of diseases, fewer errors, and more effective treatments. But the magic doesn't stop there. AI helps streamline administrative tasks, giving healthcare professionals more time to focus on what they do best, caring for patients. The result? Enhanced patient outcomes and improved quality of life. So whether it's predicting patient needs or making real-time decisions, AI is transforming healthcare, one patient at a time. Embrace the future with AI-driven healthcare solutions. Because better health outcomes start with better technology. Ready to take the leap? AI in healthcare, better diagnoses and treatments, making healthcare smarter, one innovation at a time.
to an informal chat, and I'll try and guide things through. And this is like being in a hotel because we've not had time to prepare and rehearse what it is we're going to say, but we've worked together over many years. So hopefully you'll feel the chemistry and the smoothness of the development. So I'm going to come to you first, Helen, and then to Rodri.
Hi. My background really is in public health. I came from an outside quango, if you like, leading a national UK intervention programme, if you like, and then health was devolved to Wales, and all quangos were brought into Welsh Government, and suddenly I was a civil servant, and prior to that probably didn't even know what a civil servant did or was about. Suddenly I was thrown into this context of policy, and after a year I kind of thought, I can't do this. I've been working a lot internationally. I've been doing a lot at WHO level. I've been working across Russia, Scandinavia, you name it, and suddenly I was thrown into Wales big time. After a year, I made a bold decision and I felt very strongly and passionately about that. Many Welsh people are passionate. And that was that if you want to change it, you've got to be in it to change it. And so I made a commitment to stay and to be part of what was that evolving situation in Wales, taking greater control over the health and well-being of people in Wales. Now, that journey in itself, I think, is a book in the offing. But before I will tell you, because it is very relevant to this, I was sitting at the back thinking, oh my God. There was a point at which then I just said, I can't do this any longer. I've got to get out. And I will share it with you because it is very poignant here. And the point was, I was very much into data, really, really interested as a public health consultant, really into data, trying to understand what it is that we could and should be doing. And I worked to develop the predictive risk tool. And it was a predictive risk tool, PRISM, of preempting the admission to hospital. Now, this would have been 2000 and God, I don't know, 8, 9. And I was really excited. I'd spent a year testing it, working with others, doing everything you think that you could and should do. And I remember the point at which I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And actually, you need to stop people actually getting into hospital. And I won't say, there's a lot that went on, but essentially the basis of what happened, and it never got out there, was about risk aversion. Because it was absolutely perfect, and my argument was, no, it's not, but it's not going to kill anyone, and actually we need to be testing it and working with people to make it perfect. At that point, I just thought, at the point at which then somebody said, oh, I'm not sure we can do this, I just thought, I got to get out, So I went out to the other side, but I was also, the minister asked me to do a major ministerial review of a whole range of things, but it was at that point, as an official inside, you work hard, you involve people, you engage, you look at the data, you look at the evidence, and then suddenly nothing happens. Something happens in that transition to, why aren't they doing it? So I was equally interested in understanding why it was that given the evidence, people don't actually do things. And I genuinely was interested in that. And I spent my subsequent time trying to understand that and eventually getting in as being invited to become the director of the Bevan Commission, the independent think tank for health and care in Wales. Sorry, Roger.
No, that's great. And we'll come back to the Bevan Commission and what it does and how it works with people, really, in a second. But Rodri, do you think
Yep. So good morning, everybody. So Roger Griffiths from the Life Sciences Hub. To make it simple, all my life is about is trying to get innovation as quickly as possible into the hands of people within Wales and to actually celebrate the potential of life sciences within Wales. It's been a bit of a passion since I was a kid, probably, but about 30 years trying to do it. The key element in that is seeing the potential, and we heard a bit about that in the previous session. I'm fortunate to be on almost daily basis to be able to engage with people outside of Wales, with industry, etc., who all identify the potential if only we can connect and join the dots together. And that's the exciting bit, is that cusp. If we can do it, what amazing things can happen, both in health but in the economy of Wales. I'm less public spirited than Helen, probably, in that there's also a very selfish element to that. I've got kids, I want them to stay within Wales, they need a stronger economy, and I'm rapidly getting older, as you can all see, and therefore I'm reliant on a better health and care system. And I'm sure everybody in this room shares that passion and desire to see change from whatever perspective you come at it.
Cool. Diolch, Rodri. So we've got about 20 minutes before we get called into lunch. This fire is roaring. It's really nice. But I know that, the companies or the organizations that you work for. So Helen, you run the Bevan Commission. It works with exemplars and people who bring energy and enthusiasm for change across the health system in Wales. And also, you've got an input on policy and aligned to ministers and so on. And Rodri, you work for the Life Sciences Hub, which is the designated organisation in the health and care system in Wales for engagement with industry, with innovation, with university startups, with new stuff. So you've got loads of people with new ideas about how things could be done better. You are working with loads of companies and academics that have got new ideas about how things could be done better. They are all bringing data, right? As Edward Deming says, in God we trust, but the rest of the world brings data. So they're all bringing data and opportunities, but it's hard. It's pushing water uphill. So why do you think that is, and what have you done to try to change that or to accommodate it? I'm going to come to you first, Helen.
Okay, we've worked for almost a decade with innovators. So many years ago, we recognised you will never change the world with policies, papers, publications even. It's about people. And as a commission, we recognised that and decided that we would go out and ask people for their ideas. Have you got a good idea? Is it prudent? And can you do it in 12 months? And by the way, we haven't got any money to give you, and you've got to do it over and above your day job. We had loads. So we're on over 500, and we've got our biggest cohort this year. So it doesn't diminish the demand, it goes up. So there's something in there about people and passion and wanting to make a difference. So we must never lose sight of that. They get lost in big systems and organisations, and what we do is provide a little opportunity for them to have a bit of support, give them a bit of kudos, credibility and support to develop and test those ideas. Okay. Now, what we also recognised, I remember going to the Director General after a couple of years and saying, Andrew, these are great ideas. You must, they're fantastic. The evidence is great. The data is great. Surely we can, you've got to make them work across Wales. And his answer, quite rightly, was, Helen, I can't do that. There is something there that doesn't translate ideas into practice. So ever since then, over the last 5 years, we've been looking at how and in what ways we can translate innovation into real practice. So we've been working on the adoption, the adaptation, the embedding of ideas into practice. And what we've been doing in the last 2 years is drawing on international evidence, bringing together and developing a sustainable framework that doesn't just leave people float around in their organisations, because it's really hard anyway making changes, but provides a framework that says, what's the idea, here's your evidence, let's help you build your business case, let's bring in the key partners, let's engage others and bring others around you, and test that pathway that doesn't leave people flailing in the system. And at the moment, we're testing that live as we speak with 7 planned care interventions that have been tried and tested. We're also testing the if you like, the systematic and the sustainable framework that we've pulled together. And that is something that we've learned from, if you look, we did the international review, Canada, Singapore, Germany, Scotland, they've got that framework. There isn't anything else. So that's what we're hoping, that we will support that next stage. The ideas are out there, they're in there, but how do you help translate that into practice?
Cool. Rodri?
Yeah, I'm picking up from that. There's no shortage of ideas, both from within Wales or outside. So it's a matter of really prioritising against a very, very difficult context, financially, resources, etc. So we've got to be able to really prioritise and really working from the perspective to start off with of what is the question that we're trying to answer. What is the real element? So maybe going back to Helen there, is AI... So we've been doing a lot of work on cancer and tackling cancer, which was a ministerial initiative. So really engaging with the clinicians, so very similar to Helen's framework of really finding the pinch points within pathways. So going away from a perspective of where industry comes, with torrents internationally of solutions, etc., to be able to put a signpost really and say, what are we really looking for? What are the real key things that are out there that can be matched to this? That makes life simpler, like a simpler life in many respects, in that you're able to put a big filter on things to start off with. Then it's taking those forward. Now, it is the challenge, and I'm sure our colleagues from the various home countries and further abroad this morning would all agree. It's not an issue for Wales of how do you get the ideas into practice. It is a huge element across all health systems. And we've got to get better about learning from each other. So even on that prioritisation element, looking at lung cancer, for instance, and looking at the pinch points, there's particular things for Wales, but there are solutions and other people around the world looking at that, and very close to home sometimes. So Scotland have done a huge amount of work, for instance. So even by working with one nation, we halve the amount of work, and therefore we double and allow the acceleration to go ahead. So it's hugely about collaboration, but it is recognising that there's a huge complexity there. But is there a challenge of ideas? No. Do we have amazing ideas coming from Wales that we can share with the rest of the world? Absolutely. But it's how we accelerate that element of ideas to actual practical solutions. It's not easy, but it's achievable. It's not beyond our wits if we work together. And is it needed? Well, what's the alternative?
Can I just respond on that? Because a lot of people get really confused, I think, between loads of ideas, lots of pilots, lots of pilotitis, and that seems, as if that's really negative. It's not. Because for me, this is not just about the piece of work that individual is developing. It's developing the individual to be skilled, to think on their feet, to be thinking to the future, to be open and receptive to change, and to be able to go back into their organisations and help drive change and transformation in whatever context. And I think we're in danger of saying, yes, there's lots of ideas there. The ideas are there, but unless you enable that process to evolve and skill and develop people to feel confident in saying, I've got a really good, I've actually put this, how do you put it through your system? One of our biggest issues, we've worked with over 550 people over the last 9 years, and time again, they will come back and still do and say they get lost in their own system. They're not seen, they're not visible, they're not heard. Despite the fact that we go in through the top and say, these are people who have applied, which ones do you think you would like to support as part of the process? It's almost, we call it sticky middle. Something happens. We're large organisations, and we have to look at how and in what ways we can continue to support, develop and encourage that thinking, because it's that thinking on your feet, that futuristic thinking that's going to help all people, not just people with data minds, and I'm not one of those in a sense, but how do you enable your clinicians, your people who are managing systems? It's about giving everyone that skill. And I got one very small story. We've been doing a lot of work with industry generally, not in the same sense that the Life Science Hub, but we're saying surely we ought to be learning from industry. How do they do these things? And one of the things that we went out and learned is that how did the banks get digitization? How did they get us all to bank online? They've done it, so adeptly, almost like we don't know any different. And in that process, there were two things that stuck out to me. One was they used their young people, young employees, to if you like, support their older employees in that transition. And the second thing they did, if you think about the old banks that we used to have, the tellers came out in the front to help people who were less confident in going straight online. And so there's that enabling and engaging and empowering. I know they're all E-words, but it's really important, you know, that we look at both ends of the spectrum to enable change with people.
They also closed all the physical branches.
Well, but we're also talking about closing hospitals, looking at how we change the transition of care in communities. And I think, you know, let's be really open and honest here. What are we trying to do? The first thing that we failed to see, I believe, is encouraging people to take and share responsibility for their own health and well-being. That's a basic. You know, if you are, so we're working with employees now employers at the moment to say, what are you doing for your own staff? How are you encouraging your own staff to take their own blood pressure, to be much more aware of what they're doing, to look at their data on their phone? So it's all of that whole system, and yeah, it's going to go that way anyway, even if you can't find a bank.
I've got 2 questions left in the last 10 minutes. This fire is still roaring. It's a lovely hotel that we're here, and I didn't introduce myself. So I'm the Director General Benevolent Dictator of the newly independent Republic of Evanstonia, and I get the opportunity to set up. Don't laugh, Helen. Right? And I get to set up my own health system, and I'm here because I think data is the foundation of delivering healthcare systems. You've talked about the challenges of, you know, getting innovation from people to scale, getting innovation from industry and universities to enter into a health system and to penetrate and to change at the system level. And I recognize, you know, lots of other people have said how hard all of that is. What I'm really interested in hearing from you is what are the 1 or 2 things that we should do in our new health system in Evanstonia that will stop facing the same challenges, right? How do we learn from history? How do we learn from your experience? What should we do differently to design the system so that it can be data-driven, it can be innovation and improved, you know, manifestly evidenced, improved practice, scales and penetrates quickly across that system? What you know, you've got so much knowledge. What should we do?
What a lovely utopia to think of. I think, firstly, it's a different challenge that we face. So if we were starting from scratch, you know, you're instantly not talking about data sharing agreements, etc., and how to pool information. You would be thinking of that from day one.
Yeah, I've inherited a system, right?
Ah, right.
I've inherited what I've got, right? So I'm starting from the same position that we're in now.
So, number 1 would be a conversation with would they be subjects or citizens?
Oh, that's my last question. No, just think now about how to design the system. You're learning, right? What are the things that you'd want to fix, right? If you could wave a magic wand and fix something about the structure, the organization, the culture, the approach, the whatever it is, to get better at this, because AI is only going to generate more opportunities. You know, we're going to have more ideas, and we're going to have more insights from the data and information than we've ever had before, but it's really hard to get those to penetrate through to change and different ways of practice and different decisions and so on. So what can we engineer in our system, do you think, from your experience over the last decade or so, that would change that? Forget the Evanstonia stuff, right? We are where we are.
So let's go away from the Evans University then. So I'd be investing massively in the skills side of things from day 1. Secondly, I'd be really looking culturally wise. So both the appetites and just recognition that it's not an if, but it's absolute essential elements that data is there. It is the future. So there's a cultural element. And thirdly, as part of that culture, I'd really be looking at the collaborative element. So not having debates of should we be working with industry, should we be working with academia, etc. It should be inherent, and that goes back to the skills elements. Structure-wise, yeah, you know, you'd be putting your digital routes maps, etc. in, you'd be pooling your data centrally straight away. All of those elements that we know of, but the harder elements, I think, are the longer term, which you'd really make a difference, are skills and cultural.
Great, Jack. Helen?
Okay, I would start with where people live, work and play. I would start in our communities. And I know that may sound a bit twee or whatever, but actually that's where we need to start, not in the hospitals or the systems that we've already got. So that's my starting point. And I just a little anecdote. I don't know whether anybody heard the Sanjay Javid blog recently, but he said, alongside monarchy, the NHS is the most revered, if you like, concept. And so therefore we face a dilemma. We have to change something without touching it. So it's really hard. So we're working against something that people revere, they want to hold close, and they don't want to change it. So for me, you have to work with people and engage them in that transition of support and engage from, because otherwise you'll be fighting the resistance all the way through. So how do you get those advocates from communities, and how do we do that? For us as a commission, there are four concepts that we believe are the foundations for the future. I think if in the room you would start with digital and data, we see that as absolutely cross-cutting and fundamental. But unless you start with strengthening and embedding resilient and resourceful people and communities, you're going to always be on your back foot trying to do something, trying to keep the flow, trying to manage the system. So you have to push out and share that responsibility. It's not just our responsibility. How do we engender that shared responsibility? The second one is when you do need help and care, it needs to be prudent, it needs to be integrated, and it needs to be equally well. And data is fundamental to all of those things. If you think of the inverse care law in Wales, Julian Tudor Hart, he was another advocate of data and information, but the test was what happens as a result. We're still seeing inequalities in Wales increase. The third dimension is sustainability. We cannot be naive enough to think, we'll keep pouring lots of money in and somewhere along the line it'll all be okay. We've estimated that something between 20 and 30% of the resources in health and care are wasted. Oof, that really grinds when we keep asking for more and the demand is going up like that. So there is something in there. And so sustainability, system services, workforce, but also we look at it through a financial lens. Let's be realistic here. We look at it through an environmental lens, but we also look at it through a social lens. Because if you don't take people with you, whether they're professionals or the public, then we've got a problem. And finally, the last foundation for us, and this is possibly the most significant, but it is really significant. It's around ensuring that we have dynamic. Things will change, have to change, and must change. We don't know what's coming over the hill, but we must be ready for that change. And everyone must be part of that process, not just a few. So dynamic, innovative, and transformative culture. And the real challenge is, how do we create that transformative culture where everybody is part of that change? We see digital, we see data, we see technology, and we see workforce. They're all cross-cutting. And the other cross-cutting element is partnerships. No one organisation or person can do this alone.
Cool. Right. Thank you. We're just about. Roderick, back to you. Yeah.
Certainly. Just two things to quickly add for Evans Tonia's manifesto and what have you. Let's say number one, identify something that Evans Tonia is going to be really good at, because you can't do everything, and then
Fireside
steal,
chats.
swap, etc. with pride like hell with others. And that collaborative element. And the second one, put in your constitution that the first country you want to work with is Wales.
So before we finish the fireside chat, I'm just going to reflect a little bit and maybe ask a final question about trust. So our whole conversation has been about people.
Yeah.
It's all been about people. Culture, collaboration, skills, attitude, approach, willingness. And that's not what I was expecting. We've been talking up until now about data, about AI, and about the power of data in an evidence-driven system. The more data we can have, the better the information. And we can use AI to bring better insights and more accurate insights out of all of that. That's trust the machines. Yeah? And we've hardly touched on that. We've talked about trusting the people, and that the key is all in the people. do you think the balance in society sort of generally is right? So there's a whole bunch of people out there who are very, very enthusiastic about AI, but at the same time, there's a lack of trust of machines. And I'm just struck by how everything that we've talked about around this fire for the last half an hour none of it has been really about data and technology. It's all been about people, and it's all been about trust. So to what extent should we have trust in the data and trust in the information that is derived from data? And do we need to do anything to rebalance there, to say, actually, sometimes you should go with the data, you should go with the algorithm, or you should go with the technology or the AI, not what lots of people are saying, whether that is advocating something different or advocating no change at all?
It's fascinating. So we did, the minister asked us to do have an independent conversation with the public. We did it 2 years ago now. And we went all around Wales, and we were really genuinely asking people, like, how are we going to do this? One of the real things that came out of there that shocked me was that people were saying in the room, yeah, we need to change. They know the system's broken. We know 72% of the public say the system's broken. It's not going to be fit for the future. We need change. So when we pressed them and said, oh, do you mean a bit of change? Do you mean a bit in the middle, a bit more than that? Or do you mean more radical change? They all went for radical change. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. So when we kind of went back, kind of said, to chief execs, right, okay, your public's up for radical change. They went, well, as soon as you go out there and do a bit, they'll all be up in arms. And that's probably the reality. So somehow it's about gradually building that trust over time and engaging that balance of, yes, we can trust people with our data, because that's where we've been in the past, let alone thinking of AI and what that has to offer. And I think you've got to create that story and that trust over time with people. Because whether they're staff, because you'll have resistance among staff, you'll have resistance among the public, and you've got to take people with you, because otherwise you just create a massive barrier. So I think it can be done, and there are some real exciting opportunities there, and I think also using some of that intergenerational stuff would be really good.
Rodri, trust the machines, trust the people?
Trust both, isn't it? But what you need is, and I think Alan mentioned it before, this trust that already exists within the NHS as a global brand almost, but that's very much based on expertise. So if the experts are explaining well to the public that they have trust in the system and the data and its security, and that we have the right wraparound in terms of governance, etc., and then it's really having that informed conversation with the public. As Helen says, I think there's a massive appetite for it. I think we get a bit frightened in thinking that the public are more negative maybe than they actually are, and therefore it's really having that informed. But that really is also then highlighting examples of what are happening already on a daily basis, of how it's having a positive impact and being controlled and building on that. But it's that real conversation. And as a small nation, I go back that if you're Welsh and within this room, you've already more or less given consent under the Transplant Act for the government to have an opt-out system for that. Now, to me, data seems less of a problematic element than a Transplant Act to push forward that. So if I was giving anything to the next government, and who knows which colour it will be within Wales, one of their key priorities should be that informed discussion with the public on data consent.
Can I just add the very last word, which is really, I think this is about our commissioners. We're made up of 24 commissioners from all over the world who give their time freely to us here. They constantly say to us, if Wales can't do it, nobody can. So we can do it. The size is right, the networks are right. I think the communication and the way in which we approach it is where we need to build that consensus. And I think we also allow very negative stories to predominate rather than the positive stories to give hope and aspiration for the future. And by God, we need it.
So thank you very much to the both of you. It's been a really bracing conversation for me, and I've decided that having my own microstay is just too much hard work. It's just too difficult. So I've abandoned the whole idea of Evanstonia. I'm just going to settle for living in somebody else's state, and they can run all of this. Could I just ask everybody else who's been listening in on our Fireside conversation just to say thank you very much to the two panelists. Diolch yn fawr. Handing back.
Yes, thank you so much, Evan. We are now breaking. I'm not sure if the Padma is online now. Oops. Sorry, apologize about not warning in the fire alarm test, but I hope it was good to kick up a little bit the adrenaline while we were listening to such a wonderful conversations, both the 4+ nations, now this final Fireside. Also, I'm so happy with the quality of our moderators this morning, both Dan West and Ivan. It was brilliant, your moderation. A round of applause for moderators. And now we can break for a coffee break.
Welcome to the future of health innovation. Are you an innovator at the cutting edge of social impact and health technology? Then get ready to discover a unique opportunity. We are thrilled to introduce the Social Tech and Health Innovation Village, a dedicated space designed for visionaries like you. This exclusive showcase is a key highlight of the Health Data Forum Global Summit 2025. So what exactly is the Social Tech and Health Innovation Village? It's a unique showcase area specifically curated for innovative companies, dynamic startups, and groundbreaking projects. This village is where social impact seamlessly intersects with health technology, fostering collaboration and progress. Curious if the Innovation Village is for you? We're calling all social tech startups, health AI, and data innovators, and real-world evidence enablers. Also, patient empowerment platforms and care pathway disruptors are highly encouraged to participate. And of course, digital inclusion pioneers who are bridging the tech gap in healthcare. Why should your innovative project be part of this village? Gain unparalleled visibility among influential healthcare leaders, policymakers, and fellow innovators. Enjoy direct networking opportunities with summit speakers and key sponsors, fostering invaluable connections. Your company will be prominently featured on the Summit website with your logo and project bio, boosting your online presence. You might be wondering, where exactly can you find this exciting hub of innovation? The Social Tech and Health Innovation Village is strategically located in the President's Room, right in the coffee break corridor. You'll also find a presence in the main lunchroom, ensuring maximum foot traffic and engagement. Plus, your presence will be highlighted on both the official event website and the printed agenda. Don't miss this incredible opportunity to amplify your impact. Join the Social Tech and Health Innovation Village today.
Venture into the frontiers of healthcare data innovation with the Health Data Forum. Welcome to the Health Data Forum's YouTube channel, your gateway to thought-provoking conversations, cutting-edge insights, and groundbreaking advancements in healthcare data. Join us as we explore the transformative power of data to revolutionize healthcare delivery, patient care, and societal well-being. Embark on a journey of discovery. Delve into healthcare data through our informative videos, featuring leading experts, thought leaders, and innovators. Discover how our global movement, Data First, AI Later, is building a strong foundation for ethical and impactful healthcare solutions. Experience the collaborative spirit. Be a part of our vibrant community of health data enthusiasts, where ideas converge, partnerships flourish, and innovation takes center stage. Participate in discussions, share your perspectives, and join us in shaping the future of data-driven healthcare. Stay informed about the latest developments in healthcare data through our comprehensive video library. Catch up on insightful interviews, thought-provoking presentations, and engaging discussions about the role of data as the backbone of healthcare transformation. Join us in shaping the future of healthcare. Let's harness the power of data to transform healthcare for the better. Subscribe to our channel today and become part of the Health Data Forum's mission and our Data First, AI Later initiative to make healthcare data work for everyone.